So I just want to say that there are massive protests that are underway, and the massive protests are starting to now grow much larger, and it's all on mostly all issues of injustices that have been done to different citizens here in the U.S. and people who are just here in the U.S. So might I add? Um, so the first thing that I noticed, it was a police that used a taser on an unarmed black man who actually, from what was said, that he was carrying a bat and that he was walking around with a bat and that he was threatening people. But I don't know the whole story in that. But what it went on to say is that a crowd of protesters gathered on the steps of an old courthouse in southern Pennsylvania on Friday evening, one day after the video had been posted on social media showing the local officer using a taser on the unarmed black man who was sitting on the sidewalk, who appeared to be complying with their rules. So a dozen of the protesters outside Lancaster County Courthouse were calling for an end to police brutality. And so that's a long injustice that African Americans have usually battled with over many, many years, even decades. And so it just seems like even if we've done marches, if we've done protests, that for a while, some things are heard and others aren't. And more recently, what's been happening, a lot of the officers have been exonerated or they find no fault. Or even if they do see that the officer has done something, they're on paid leave, um, and or they get bailed out. And now it's just blatant disrespect for the citizens of the communities, and particularly African American communities. So it goes on to say that there's an external investigation into the police officers' use of force. So I think there needs to be a higher police accountability to the community. One of the protesters, Brandon Rowe of Lancaster County, told ABC in numbers of solidarity that this movement has, that we need more respect for people's rights and the rights of the respect. And so I agree to that. It goes on to say that it is not okay for the police to treat some people different than others. Another protester, Melinda Harnish Clatterbuck of nearby Fayette County, told WHTM. So when it's a systematic problem, then I think there has to be a systematic response. So Sean Williams, 27-year-old shown in the video having a taser put on him, was at a rally Friday night. And so he declined to speak to the reporters on camera, but he thanked the media for being there, according to WHTM. So the widely shared video of the incident taken by the bystander shows that at least two police officers ordering Williams to sit down on the sidewalk on the curb in Lancaster. So he then complies, and then the officers then repeatedly direct Williams to put his legs straight out in front of him. And so it goes on to say that his legs are straight out in front of him. And so he says, or if you don't do this, you're going to get tased. So a male officer standing behind Williams can be heard saying this in the video with the taser drawn. And so I guess there's a video on the side, but it isn't coming through. I had looked at it earlier, so I'll see if I can pull it up. But Williams, he writhes in pain, okay? And so once he's on the ground, and then the tasers dart like probes attached to his back, male officer then orders Williams to stay flat on his stomach with his arms out like an airplane. More officers then arrive on the scene, and Williams is placed in handcuffs. And so there was a comment from one of the officers where he said he would have put him in handcuffs. So this is the man that they're referring to who they tased. And so I'm going to try to pan down. So according to the police report, the encounter with Williams stemmed from a 911 call that the authorities received on Thursday morning reporting that the man had a bat and went after a group of three persons. So Lancaster police officer Shannon Mazzante responded to the call and came across a group of three individuals telling a male to get away from them, that the report said. So Mazzante told the man and identified by police as Williams to sit down several times, but he didn't comply. So Williams wouldn't leave the woman in the group alone and kept repeating that he wanted a specific item. So his social security card from her, rather. So according to that report, so Lancaster police officer Philip Burnott arrived on the scene soon after and warned Williams that a taser would be used if he didn't listen or comply to the orders. So Williams was instructed to sit with his legs straight out in front of him and to cross his ankles. This is done as a measure of control to ensure that if someone is going to flee or offer physical resistance, they will have to move their legs under them to do so. So noncompliance is often a precursor to someone that is preparing to flee or flight, with the officers. That is, report is saying, or at least that's what the officers reported. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I believe there might be more to the story. Of course, we'll find out as it unfolds, but I'm going to try to see if I can revamp, and try to capture that video of what happened. But I want to switch gears a little bit here. So now, this reads, the fake news that help reveal the ongoing crisis. So it says stop separating families because, anything that is fake news usually happens to be something that isn't in agreement with the chief in power. And it's always about something that he's doing wrong or something that he's done wrong or he's about to prepare to do that is wrong to someone. And so it's always coined as fake news. And so this title here is lovely. It says the fake news is that the fake news that helped reveal the ongoing crisis. So the government official Senate testimony was misinterpreted, but it also prompted research on, of course, problems. So there's a lot of people reacting. So this is just one of many articles showing the growing numbers of protests that are coming out. And so I'm going to switch gears over here. And so this is ongoing. This is a big protest turnout as well on the issue of coast to coast protests denouncing the Trump immigration policy, which is the zero tolerance policy. So there's demonstrators that have gathered in the cities across the country to protest President Trump immigration policies. And so that is going underway right now. And so there's a lot of angry people. And so this is pictured here without me reading it. I'm just showing you the numbers of people. Now, I just saw quickly ran by some videos on YouTube. I didn't really look at them, but I could see the way they were titled. It was saying that when Black people protest, it doesn't seem to work. Black people aren't the only one protesting. There are other people that are protesting, and their protests really don't seem to work. And what I'm saying this to say this, I'm not saying this to say that one is chosen over the other. Do you remember, I don't know if you paid attention to this, where they were saying that they were going to give the parents that were separated from their children, that they were going to give the children back to this. They haven't given all those children back. So Black people's protests are not the only ones that have been ignored. There have been other protests from other ethnic groups that have been completely ignored, and they're not trying to fix it. And I've said this before, that it's a bigger problem than what people realize, that it is a huge problem. So there's rallies and people speaking at the rallies, and on the right, you can see there's probably a girl, I would bet that she, is an immigrant or a person that is representative of immigrants. But everybody, most people that are here are immigrants. But it is true that sometimes it is looked at as that one group is favored over another. And I'd like to tell you that those are also deflectors, detractions from what the real problems really are. And I really do believe that we're all being targeted in different ways. And we've been used to be put against one another to fight with each other and not fight against the real issues that are happening at hand. And so when we have all these little fights inside of our cultures and we battle over little, issues such as who's the lightest, who's the darkest, who's the richest, who's the poorest, um, who's the most educated and who's the most talented, those things tend to pull us away from what real problems are going on. And we're all it's at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. And so if you're black, if you're a woman, if you're poor, and you could be from any culture and then be that, if you are somebody that is marginalized in some type of way because of something you believe in, or maybe who you look like, are maybe a religious faith, or if you're not religious, there could be many reasons why you could be treated unfairly. And the I'm afraid that this is bigger than just marching. I think there's going to be a lot of angry people, and I don't know, but I get the feeling that something really bad is going to happen outside of all of this, because this is just the beginning of the boiling point and the beginning of the tipping point. And I believe that these protests are going to be protests that we're going to see a lot more of. And it's not just those protests, it's going to also be the protests having to do with African Americans and police brutality. And those seem to be the bigger issues that seem to be happening. So hundreds of thousands of rallies nationwide for illegal immigrant families separated at the border. And then we have issues surrounding uh, police violence um, in the African American community. And these are the things that I feel that are going to be, boiling points for a lot of people, that they're going to be boiling points where a lot of people are going to be disappointed about not getting their needs met, or not having, you know, um, their voices heard. And so we're going to see a lot of angry people, a lot of angry protesters, a lot of disgruntled individuals, people that are probably going to want to, write, letters. And then there might be some casualties. There might be more violence and more police brutality. And I'm sure of it, because that's the way it's looking. So anyway, I'm trying to pull up. I always try to look at all kinds of different articles and different views, different things that people are involved in, to try to see what the mindsets of people's are like. Everybody from all different walks of life. So I try not to leave any stone unturned, left unturned. So even, I even try to, sometimes I even try to go to groups that I probably wouldn't normally go to, but I try to hear what their problems are, to try to find out more about them, because a lot of times people are angry about different groups. They don't like them, but they've never been around them. They've never heard what their problems are and how they feel and what bothers them. I've went around LGBT groups, women, males, of events, to hear what their problems are. I've went around people who are people from other countries, to hear what their problems are, to find out what they think, how they've been treated, and of course African American groups. to find out what their problems are and what, and some of that is easy because I'm actually African American myself. So, or African. So I just think that, there's a lot of that just upset people. And so I believe that it's going to get worse. I don't see it getting any better. And the other thing, I know people don't want to hear this, but I believe if we have now is reelected for another 4 years, it's because money is how he was reelected. And I believe that's a possibility, a strong possibility, because of the fact that he pretty much, even right now, if you look at it, he's trying to pick someone for the SCOTUS. And I believe there's two women, and on the 9th of July, he's supposed to announce who those two women are. And one, I think I was reading that she was a devout Catholic, and I don't know who the other one is. I didn't really do all of the research in that. But also, there's something brewing in Mexico where they're having elections. They're actually having a Mexican presidential election, and it says that it could deteriorate the foreign US. And so Mexico's fake news creators up to their game ahead of election. So Mexico election polls 2018. So the latest poll tracker, and it shows AMLO set to win huge victory. And so there's some people, I would bet, that probably have a zero tolerance for what's happening here in the US. And so there are a lot of angry people out there. There's also a lot of scandal with this, immigration business. I've mentioned that. I don't know if people realize it's a bigger animal than what people think it is. Even if he was to not do the zero tolerance policy, there's still those shelters or those detention centers. He's still going to keep the kids longer with the parents. And then there's still kids who haven't even been reunited with their parents. And there's also corporate industries who are involved in um, some of those monies that they're receiving. There are people behind it, more than one, I believe. There at least one that I knew, um, where I read about him, and he actually was behind not only the prison industry, but he's also involved in the immigration detention centers. And some of them are located in Texas. There's many of them, and that has been going on for a long time. But they brought up the issue with Obama, and they said that he was doing the same thing. But the only thing is that he was, from what it was said, that he was a little bit more swifter. They would do this catch and release, and they wouldn't hold the children that long, is what I was reading. Now, I don't know how true that is, but it sounds like there must have been some validity to it, because you don't see the protest that you're seeing now, and the anger you're seeing now. You didn't see that when he was in office. And so there was frustrations, but not to this magnitude. And so now this is just out and right and blatant. We're going to do what we want to do, whether you like it or not. And so that's why it's a zero tolerance policy, or zero tolerance policy. And so, in other words, what they're saying, if you listen to that zero tolerance, we're not tolerant. We're not going to be tolerant. We don't have to be tolerant. And so that doesn't just mean just the immigration. It also means the police brutality. It also means the injustices that are happening all around here in the US to everyone who's been, put in a position where they feel like their voice isn't heard, and they're not really winning any of these battles at all. And so I don't think this is by accident, it's by design. And so I would just say you'd have to brace yourself and be ready, because there is going to be some violence that is going to ensue eventually in the long run. The more it grows, the more the tipping point and the boiling point, it will eventually implode. And so I believe there is going to be a resistance that is one that you've never seen before behind a lot of things that are going on, and there are going to be some casualties, unfortunately. And so, with that being said, and I believe that it won't make much of a difference except that people will be more on high alert and more amped. And so, you may even have people who will probably try their best to arm themselves because of the circumstances that are happening. Right now, we're not seeing that, but it's getting there. It's going to gradually get there. And so I'm going to leave this. I'm going to see if I can relocate the one where, it was talking about the guy who, in Pennsylvania. Okay, so okay, it should be easy to find. Okay. So anyway, this was the title of the article, and it was in GMA, Yahoo News, and it says, police use a taser on an unarmed black man in Pennsylvania and it spurs protests. And so the video is here.
A police officer tasing an unarmed man from behind him as the man sat on the sidewalk. Some say that man was appearing to obey commands when it happened. Here's ABC's Adrian Banker tonight on that video from Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Tonight, an investigation. This unarmed man seated, tased from behind. Lancaster, Pennsylvania police respond to a 911 call claiming Sean Williams was threatening people with a bat. No bat was found, but police say the 27-year-old was not compliant. That's before cameras rolled. Officers tell Williams to sit down. He eventually does. Straight out. Straight out. A second officer is also heard giving orders. Williams appears to mix up the two sets of instructions, but never turns towards officers.
Oh, come on, bro.
The police report reads, non-compliance is often a precursor to someone that is preparing to flee or fight with officers.
I would have trained my police officers to handcuff him first, for safety of both him and the officers.
David, Lancaster's mayor says this video is of great concern. She plans on equipping officers with body cameras. David?
Adrian Banker tonight.
Okay, and so that is that right there. And we just had someone in Pennsylvania that was shot in the back 3 times. And the young man, I recently heard that the officer that shot him in the back, they actually posted his bail. And so that has got people in an uproar right now. And so, as a matter of fact, I believe his name was Antoine. Yeah. Okay, so this was the other incident that happened in Pennsylvania, and this was a young boy who, he was running and in fear. He was 17 years old. His name was Antoine Rose Jr., and he was killed by the police officer. And so I believe they, from what I saw in a recent post, that the police officer, I think they might have incarcerated him, and there was a bail that was posted. And so there were protests for this as well. And so there were many people gathered. And so once again, there are many people gathered once again. but this time it's for the other young man who's been tased. So yeah, so it doesn't end, it doesn't stop there. And so it's just a matter of time when people have had enough. And you know, if you get a lot of people to a point where they feel like their voices aren't heard and their lives are not important, and it's all about the wealthy, and it's all about the elitist, and it's all about people who are, you know, just for themselves and forget the rest, it's going to be met with resistance, great resistance. And so I'm going to leave this video at that, because it looks like we're headed into a situation that is in an abyss of no return. But anyway, with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. I'm going to leave it at that. But it doesn't look good, is what I'm saying. None of this is looking good. Even if we're home, and I know some people are saying, I'm not going to be involved in none of the marches, I'm just going to be home safe. You best believe there's going to be something that's brewing. Something big is going to happen, because too many of these things are happening all at once. And this is the same feeling I got back in '92, before that massive riot here in Los Angeles. And I'm afraid it's the same thing again, but only worse. Like, comment, subscribe.